This episode of Juice Guru Radio is brought to you by Try Best, making healthy living easy.
Welcome to Juice Guru Radio. Discover what the magic and power of juicing can do for you. And now, your host, best-selling author of The Complete Idiot's Guide to Juice Fasting, Steve Prusak.
Well, it's going to be a great show. We've got Michael Ofei coming up, author of The Minimalist Vegan, a simple manifesto on why to live with less stuff and more compassion. It's going to be great. I love this topic. So get yourself some water, tea, juice. Get ready to declutter. We'll be back right after this with Michael Ofei.
Did you know you can make a great living in the hottest new business trend today? The Juice Guru Certification Program is the world's first online course to give you the knowledge and marketing skills to excel as a juicing coach and start making money in no time. Find out more at juicecoachtraining.com.
Juice Guru Radio.
Well, welcome back to the show. We've got Michael Ofei. I said he's the author of The Minimalist Vegan. He's a blogger and now podcasting, the minimalistvegan.com. And he's here on the show together with his wife, Mesa. The duo is on a mission to inspire millions to live with less stuff and more compassion. Let's welcome to the show, Michael.
Hey, how you guys going? Oh, look, I am riding solo for this conversation. So please bear with me. I'll try to do my best Marsha impersonation.
So how's it going over there down under, Michael?
It's going great. Look, we're just about to turn into autumn or fall, as you guys would say, in North America. So, no, it's great. I'm in the capital city, which is called Canberra, which is in between Melbourne and Sydney. And things are looking great. It's very relaxed in our culture.
Well, I'm really excited to hear about your journey. My wife and I have been watching this show from Australia. It's called Bringing Sexy Back. And I could see in your country that, you know, health isn't the number one thing.
No, it certainly is not. I think we have a long way to go to be open to things like what you're teaching with your wife around juicing. But little steps.
Yeah, so let's talk about your journey. How did you get into all this?
Yeah, so I think for me, obviously what I really specialize in is the intersection of minimalism and veganism. And as we, if I reflect on my journey, it all started with minimalism, which then led into veganism and then all the health benefits that came along with that. And it was about 6 years ago, I was just searching for some more purpose in my life. I just left real estate. I just left that industry that I really loved because it wasn't something that I saw a future with Marsha and being in that industry. She wanted to travel. She wanted to do creative endeavors with photography. So I had to really take a step back and reevaluate my life. And up until that point, I defined a lot of my success by more. I was in my mid-20s and society, my family and friends had conditioned me to believe that success came in accumulating assets, whether it was houses or stocks or, having a lot of wealth, having cars, having, a 6-bedroom house and investment properties. That's how I define success. So that's what I was pursuing. Mm-hmm. But when that was taken away from me, I was forced to reevaluate what success looked like. And I came across a blog. Your audience may be familiar with Leo Babauta's work, zenhabits.net, where he talks all about creating very healthy habits. But he also talks about Zen Buddhism and veganism and minimalism. So it was after sort of looking at his journey and seeing that, hey, hang on, this guy has flipped the equation on success. So, he really sees success in pursuing less. And getting out of what I call the more virus and this constant desire of wanting more things, and associating our happiness to it. He was really advocating for, how do you pare down your stuff to really identify what's important to you? Do you have the courage to simplify? And this type of language was really appealing to me. And through his content, I actually came across an article where he talked about, veganism and animals, which led me down a rabbit hole, no pun intended with that terminology, but it led me down a rabbit hole to, discover a film called Earthlings, which I shared with my wife, Marsha, who was vegetarian at the time, which we watched together. I was only open to watching this documentary because I was already open to changing all my behaviors and habits through minimalism. And once I watched this documentary, which touched on, animal exploitation across not only food, but, the entertainment industry, the fashion industry, the farming industry, across the whole spectrum, that's when I became connected to what I was eating and consuming and became vegan overnight.
One of those.
Yes.
One of those journeys, just kind of like, and that movie will do it, won't it?
Yeah, it will. Well, not for everybody. I've recommended to some friends, and it didn't seem to really change their perspective. But for most people that watch it, it certainly changes the paradigm. For those of you who haven't seen it, it's narrated by Joaquin Phoenix. The music's done by Moby. It's it's incredible filmmaking, but the way they show animal exploitation, it's a borderline horror movie. So it's a bit hard to unsee some of that activity when you watch it. So that's where it all shifted for me. And it wasn't just food. It was really a whole lifestyle that we started to embark on. We audited our clothes. We audited, even our car, our transportation, everything. Everything was in question.
Well, so this happened at the same time as trying to become more of a minimalist?
Yeah, well, the minimalist journey started first, and then veganism came along. And I think this brings up a really good point about the intersection of the two concepts, because, at the time it was all about, we were ruthlessly paring down everything from sentimentals to shoes to fashion to beauty products, everything we were paring down. However, as soon as we became vegan, there was another consideration in terms of just owning less. Then it was about, what are you owning? Is what are you owning in line with the values of ethical consumption? So that's when, like, for example, we might we share shampoo, we share deodorants, great. That's really good from a minimalist standpoint and a footprint. But, do those products contain animal ingredients inside of them? So it just adds another layer of consideration when you're looking at your consumption habits. Mm-hmm. And it all sort of happened at the same time. So it was quite overwhelming. But we were at a point in our lives where we were ready to embark on that knowledge and that research. And, particularly for men, it's not easy, when you're trying to, buy things that are going to last a long time, because you don't want to have to keep buying them. But they also tick those boxes of ethical considerations. You find yourself on some really niche pockets of the internet trying to find these products, because you can't just walk into your local retail outlet or thrift store and expect the salesperson to be able to answer the questions about their supply chain and fair work and ethical consideration and everything else that comes along with that.
So for the two of you, what did this change bring out, from letting go of things to eating vegan? What did you notice? What were the first changes as you went along the journey?
Look, I think the first big change is conviction and independent thinking. So I think for your mental health, when you sort of break away from the status quo and what is expected for success, what is expected for you to consume, you start looking at the world very differently. So it brought a level of clarity and understanding of the world that has been invaluable. So that's probably the first benefit. I think for minimalism, it's brought an incredible amount of focus in my life and our lives. We spend a lot of our time, doing our life's best work with a Minimalist Vegan and creating content there. And we are only able to do that while supporting ourselves just previously through day jobs and things like that, because we were willing to pare down our things. I mean, when you're trying to serve people at a greater level, and you probably experience this as well, Stephen, the last thing you want to do is think about what you have to wear today. And, and think about, how many commitments you have. Are you overcommitted with your relationships? Are you overcommitted with things you've said yes to? And that's where minimalism really helps with that clarity and focus. It sort of calls you out to identify what's actually really essential. And it forces you to do that work, so you know what you can say yes and what you can say no to. The vegan aspect has just brought us more connected to the world, to nature, to animals, of course, but it's also given us perspective, and it's given us great health. I mean, our digestion improves. I'm currently experimenting with intermittent fasting, down to one meal a day. And using, eating very large Buddha bowls substantiated with a juice and experimenting with how I feel. And, I just think the energy that plants give you to be able to do your best work has also been invaluable. So I think they both work really well together.
And down the rabbit hole we go. It's true, and it's amazing what's possible when we're out of the conditioning. The other thing I was thinking of when you were talking, though, was the journey of being an entrepreneur and living your passion and getting the message out and inspiring and helping other people. And even within that journey, there can be a lot of clutter. I'd struggled earlier on with letting things go and doing everything for the business. Now I outsource. We have a team, and it's great.
Yeah.
So that's another trap we can get into, isn't it? When we take on too much and don't give up a lot of our control.
Oh, tell me about it. The more virus exists everywhere, right? And I think for those who are ambitious, even though for, the right reasons, in inverted commas, it brings its own level of clutter. Because, as you're constantly, seeking and being open to opportunities. I know when, you guys initially reached out to do an interview, we pushed it back a few times because we had that laser beam focus on content. But I think, when you look at your company operating system, I think, I don't know about you, but we've experimented with all these different types of apps and systems and all of these things that create so much clutter in your workflow. But we had to take a step back at some point and say, hang on, as a minimalist, how would we run a minimalist business here? And, and I think sometimes it just means you have to be comfortable with foregoing some particular features. You need to be comfortable perhaps doing some more work or having the courage to outsource, as you've been doing as well. I mean, we run most of our business just in Google Calendar now. We've gotten rid of many apps and everything just runs on a calendar, how time is allocated. And yes, we don't have all the functionality and flexibility that we would get in 4 or 5 different pieces of software, but we're happy to make that compromise for, to fight for simplicity in our business, to give us a peace of mind. And for someone else, it could be just going back to analog. If a pen and paper, is productive for you, you don't need to feel the need to have the more virus and catch yourself on YouTube rabbit holes about the best systems to use. And then likewise for yourself and people who are ready to outsource particular content, whether it's, post-production and editing and podcasting, do you have the courage to also, pay somebody to free up your time to do your most meaningful work? But again, as a minimalist, do you know where your time is most best spent? Do you know what your core strengths are in your business? And are you willing to say no to the things that are not your strengths so you can focus on that more?
Great points. And it's, it's definitely a journey. Now, you talk about the trap of minimalist aesthetics. Did you want to shed some light on that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I see this more and more, particularly with with social media. When you look at Instagram and Facebook and YouTube, there's this perception that there's a real aspiration in minimalism because let's face it, simplicity in itself is quite sexy. I mean, minimalism actually came from design concepts. So, when you look at, the design of an iPhone, they're ruthlessly getting rid of features and ports and buttons to always refine and make it simpler. And we find that really attractive as a culture. And the same thing goes for clothing. The same thing goes for home decor. And I think we can sometimes miss the point of minimalism where all we're trying to do is pare down our things just so we can bring on things that look really pretty or they look really good to the outside world. And while that's great and that might be really important to you, that's fine. The real value in minimalism is actually, it doesn't have to be sexy. I mean, there could be ugly minimalism. You might be in a particular, home, or you might not wear the most fashionable clothes, but you might be in a house where things are not so trendy. But you look around and you don't have many possessions. You've reduced how many decisions that you had to make. And unfortunately, we don't see too many examples of that type of minimalism to betray the movement. So I think for those who are getting into it, just be aware of that trap, that, the aesthetic in itself and pursuing that aesthetic is a form of the more virus. It's actually creating further increased expectations of yourself in your life. And that can lead to depression and discontentment, because you're comparing yourself to others about, I don't own, I need to own, 30 or less clothes because somebody else is doing it. Or my house needs to look this particular way because it's pretty and I really want it to look that way.
Interesting. I've never thought of that. So that's you could see how you can get trapped in that mindset.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and this clearing away, what's been the hardest part of the journey? Do you ever get to a point where, you're wishing maybe that you weren't in this mindset, or that you missed the life you had before, or that you feel lonely on the journey? What do you think's been the hardest part?
Yeah, look, in terms of the loneliness, I've been really fortunate to be able to embark on this journey with my wife, Marsha, the whole way through. So that's a bit of a life cheat code for me in our situation. But I think the toughest part of the journey, and I'll speak on both sides, and I'll speak first about minimalism. And I think with minimalism, clutter creeps up on you. So what I mean by that is, if you're not constantly auditing your things, we think of storage, for example. So whenever any of us are considering buying a new home or renting a new home, one of the first considerations as a feature is how much storage does this property have? And I think the challenge and the problem that I have with storage is that on the surface, you can have a minimalist aesthetic, or you might not have many things, but that's because you've buried all of your possessions in storage, and you haven't really addressed the core problem. And I think for minimalism, that's where it's caught me over time, is that, what you say yes to in terms of commitments, friendships, and things that just creep into your storage, that creeps up on you. And then when you realize that, it can be quite overwhelming and quite sad, because you're like, it's like you've got the weight of things in your life, and you're quite disappointed with yourself for not staying on top of it. So that's some of the ongoing battles I've had with minimalism, although I've become a lot more mindful of that over time. From the veganism aspect, why I became vegan is for the ethical consideration. So that comes with its own reality. I don't know if you've had Claire Mann, she's from Australia, on your show, and she's written a book recently called Dystopia. And this is really just talking about, lifting the veil on society and seeing it for what it is. And it actually creates a level of dystopia once you realize all of the harm and slaughter and exploitation and capitalism that comes along with veganism. And, that can lead to a level of depression, when
right.
you turn on the television and people are so angry about live export, yet alone there's so much meat being consumed in their homes, and there's such a contradiction that can really rile you up, and that can make you quite emotional. So I think for me, that's been the biggest challenge, is just fighting to be outside of the vegan bubble, because a lot of us listening to this can get caught up in a health bubble, or the vegan bubble, or the minimalist bubble, and you surround yourself and all your content that you're consuming with these values to sort of keep you on your journey. But what that does is it pushes you away from reality, and you start to remove that empathy from the world, that relatability to be able to communicate with people that don't necessarily have the same ideals and values as you. But there's a fine balance, because you don't want to rile yourself up and get too emotional. And I think minimalism and veganism, it's just this rapid consumerism. The triggers come at birthdays, they come at Christmas time, where you just see so much consumerism. There's two ways to approach it. You could be overwhelmed and sad, or, you can take it as an opportunity to be a voice for that movement, and by doing it in a very relatable way.
Key. Yeah, that's key, isn't it? Because, when we're in the judgment seat, that repels people.
Oh, for sure.
It's definitely, it's just an interesting topic, all of this. I mean, it's just very thought-provoking. We're here with Michael Ofei, author of The Minimalist Vegan. And that book, how do we get a hold of that book, Michael?
Yeah, look, that book can be found, online primarily. So if you shop on Amazon, it's available there, or all the other common retail outlets which are online. The book is there. And if you ask your library for a copy, it will be on the database, so they'll be able to get that in as well. If you're not into just buying things. We also have digital digital versions, of course. That too on Kindle or iBooks. So just type it into Google and you should be able to find a copy near you.
We'll actually put a link for you under the show notes at juicegururadio.com under this show with Michael Ofei. So check for it there too.
Thank you for listening to Juice Guru Radio. Find out more about us at juicegururadio.com. Until next time, get your juice on.
That word consumerism, is this, are we living in a sane society? I mean, what is it with consumerism, and what is it that people are looking for, and how do we escape that trap?
Yeah, look, I think it's I think when we lift up the veil and we look at the life cycle of a product, I think that's where it needs to start. Are we getting to the point of consuming something? At that point where we make that decision, are we considering the life cycle of it? What happens at the end of its life cycle? Where does it go? How does it impact that environment in our world? And also, what type of use do you get out of it as a consumer as well? And I think, it's only natural when we have all this advertising, a lifetime of advertising, not even this advertising, because not a huge amount of us are watching traditional media or radio or television. It's creeping into our lives through influence, through people we look up to, through social media, to people around in our lives, and everything is a walking brand. So it's easy to fall into that trap of wanting more. But I think once you start to understand the life cycle of things and the impact that it has, and also the beauty in simplicity and the beauty in having less things, then that becomes an attractive proposition. And I think only when we can make something like minimalism or veganism attractive as a proposition, something to aspire to, then we're willing to do that work about the life cycle, because it's not easy work. It requires a lot of research to actually understand what's happening, and for you to be more diligent in the way you consume, and for you to, to say no in social situations that you've been accustomed to. There needs to be a level of a willingness and aspiration to get that journey started.
Now, for that part of the show is really we've got two friends in our audience, basically, two types of people that are looking to get healthy and stay healthy with juicing. And we've got our entrepreneurs, our health entrepreneurs that are becoming certified juice therapists with us and really want to ignite the juice revolution, get people healthier and transcend along the journey. And so the next part, I want to talk a little about your business and living your passion and some things that they can take home. So in building your business, what's been the most challenging thing with turning your passion into a business?
Yeah, well, I think it's for anything that starts off as a passion project, you start to grow a real attachment to, the purity of it. So I think there's two different hats to wear when you're thinking about monetizing versus just creating something that's pure. And I think that, to me, has been the greatest challenge for us. We started the Minimalist Vegan in March 2015 purely as a passion project. But because it was a passion project, it actually grew quite quickly because, the content we're creating came from a really pure place, and it was able to grow quickly. Now that we are transitioning our business into monetization, it without question starts to compromise that purity, because It's just part of the game. I mean, all of a sudden you need to reverse engineer your audience and understand what their wants and desires are to see if you can create a value to them, or it's, are you creating value to sponsors and partners, whilst compromising that relationship with your audience. And so I think, for me, that's been the greatest challenge, is the balance between, just being the creative artist and being the entrepreneur, and what's the middle ground between the two. So please go on.
No, yeah, it just reminded me of my own journey, because when I started my podcast 10 years ago, when podcasting was new, and it was one of the first health podcasts out there. And then it was the same thing though, Michael. I was trying to figure out, wow, we've got a big audience. What do we do? Can I leave the full-time job? This is really my passion. And then I remember just, the pushback from a lot of the people in the audience that didn't want to continue that journey when it came to creating programs and things like that. So I remember what that transition was like.
Absolutely. And you've got such a prime example, but I think, but you finding ways to monetize your business has given you more time to have a larger impact, right?
Exactly. I talked about it before in a webinar we were doing recently, and I always say it, it was this awareness. It was an entrepreneur that I was listening to at the time, and he said something really valuable to me. And it was just that if you, you could be the best teacher in the world and not really be able to pay the bills or buy your organic food. Like you need to figure out a way to market your message in order to reach more people. And that's what helped me to embrace, okay, you know what? We're going to reach more people, and that's the number one thing. So what do we need to do to make that happen?
Absolutely. You're spot on. And I think, you need to be able to look yourself in the mirror and say, well, what's the motive here? What's the North Star? And I think when your moral compass is to, particularly people in your audience, is to spread health and compassion to as many people as possible, then, you market your tail off, partner with who you need to partner with. Propaganda people. I say that intentionally, but if you've got a good message and a positive message, go all in behind that. And I think, that's the point we're at right now, is that we're, everything's on the table. We have a decent audience. And, we do freelancing on the side. We do some writing, but, we've got, multiple revenue streams coming in and books coming up, but we're not as precious about that transition because we're really confident in our why and what we're trying to do.
Always comes back to the why. And, no matter what, on this journey, you're still going to get that pushback. And I posted something in our Facebook group like a week ago or something because of some negativity that was coming at me. And it was basically the people that know you will never question why you're doing what you're doing. And, the people that come in and just surface, see what you're doing, might not get it, and think you're in it for the money. But those that know you know how generous you are and how this is a mission. This is a passion.
Absolutely. And and those who are close to you know what you've been, creating for free for so many years on your own accord in your spare time. And continue to do that. I mean, for content creators specifically, I mean, there's times where, I've been working, pretty strong day job, a great career. And in my lunch break after work, I'm, creating content when I could be doing so many other things. And sometimes I think, do people think I'm crazy? But you do it because you're pulled to do it. And I think if you have that ability to amplify that and you have a means of paying yourself so you can continue to do that, I think you can be really comfortable, pushing that hard.
Well, it's really exciting. You're reaching so many people, 50,000 visitors a month at theminimalistvegan.com. What would you say has been the key contribution to growing the audience this quickly around your passion?
I think, it's not our first website that we've launched, so we've got a bit of experience, but I think the word I use there is launch. I think that's really important for any content platform is when you're about to launch something, that's an opportunity to really build as much buzz as possible. So I think for us, it was, when we launched the website, it was, design was very important to us and the content was very important to us. So we launched with 5 posts that, we spent a lot of time creating. We created a design that was very focused on the content, not much clutter on the website. We wanted it to represent what did the words Minimalist Vegan say on our website, that whole experience. And then with that, we spent a lot of time reaching out to influencers and partners before we launched to build a relationship. So I'm talking like 4 months in advance, we're building relationships. And this is just, and when I say relationships, this is not expecting anything in return, really just, giving a shout out to people we admire and acknowledging the work that they're doing. But with that, we did have a coming soon page. And in our email signature, people were able to click through to the coming soon page. So quite organically, we had a lot of responses from these influencers saying, I noticed you've got a website coming up. We've signed up. I can't wait to see what you guys have in store. And it started a bit of a dialogue. So by the time we launched, we had a database of hundreds of contacts that we could reach out to that were already anticipating something. And then that really propelled us and gave us momentum out of the gates. And then from there, sort of SEO from Google search results for recipes and common keywords and articles started to get momentum and brought us sustainable traffic. That's always the best traffic, in my opinion, because social media is you only get a burst of traffic when you share something. But SEO tends to compound month over month, depending on how quality your content is. So together with our launch, and there was one other component to that as well. We offered a free cookbook as an email lead magnet initially. We've taken it off the website now. But we literally had 21 recipes, which we packaged together in a professional ebook, which was available on iBooks and Amazon for free if you signed up to our email list. And that page converted at like 50%. So the combination of all of those things, and, once you had people in our email list, then we had an audience that we could work with over time. So those were a couple of key ingredients to getting things started.
And I should say, how do you apply minimalism to your online projects? Because we know how that could be.
Work in progress, Stephen. I think, for us, it's like the minimalism that we're applying at the moment is, okay, what's the most important thing that we can do? And that is creating content. So we have moved from one article a week to, on addition to that, a plant-based vegan recipe every week, to on top of that, a weekly podcast, to on top of that is eventually going to be a weekly vlog, which we're going to be launching probably in May, which is going to document our journey from moving from Australia to Slovenia as minimalist vegans and what that whole journey looks like. So for us, the North Star, the absolute most dollar productive thing that we can do is creating content. So the minimalist approach, as I said, back to that calendar, is, does our calendar reflect that priority? And I think this is really important for anybody running a business, is there's really impactful things that you could be doing, and there's things that you think are important that are not that important. And I think you need to identify what are you going to get the most return on investment for. For a real estate agent that I used to be, it was making 100 calls a week and having appointments with customers. That was the most important thing I could be doing. Everything else kind of got in the way of that, and my business wasn't moving forward. In the Minimalist Vegan, it's content. Well, how much are we publishing? How prolific are we being in publishing? On top of that, how much progress are we making on our books or, membership platforms and everything else that we've got on the side? And then, the admin, so emails, replying to comments and, running your accounting books and everything like that, whilst it's important, shouldn't dominate your week and your time. So for us, we just have a real clear focus on what's important, and we're not kind of afraid to say no to opportunities to protect that time.
Now, is your goal, is that your focus, to show people how to live with less stuff and more compassion? Is that what it's all about?
Absolutely. Yeah. We hear from our audience all the time, inspiration, inspiration, inspiration. So I think, that if you got to listen to your audience and your customers. So that's what we're trying to double down. And that's why we're trying to show more of ourselves. That's why we want to document our whole journey on YouTube, and we don't want to hide anything. We want to show you what it's like being in a new country and figuring out, okay, what am I going to buy here? What am I going to eat? How am I going to protect my health? How am I going to still live these values in a completely different environment and grow that so people can just see the raw stuff, what's really happening. And hopefully that's going to inspire you to shift that paradigm and disconnect from the social pressure and start to think more independently.
And it's a unique niche. You're here in the blue ocean with Minimalist Vegan. I don't think that I've seen that term used often.
No, it's it's there might be. I've seen it. Obviously, I've seen it pop up a lot on my radar because we have people reach out to us. But yeah, less stuff, more compassion. The intersection, conscious consumerism. To me, just makes a lot of sense. So, happy to be in that pocket. And we have a lot of vegans in our audience that, want to pare down and live with less. And we also have a lot of people who are interested in living with less that get introduced to vegan living and plant-based living.
So let's wrap up with 3 steps we could take. What would your 3 steps be to be more of a minimalist vegan? Would you combine them, or 3 steps to be a minimalist, or 3 steps to be a vegan? How do you what are 3 action steps we could take to integrate this? Yeah,
well, look, I think for minimalism, to me, it's the first step you need to take is there's a couple of approaches. You can look at getting a very quick win. So what I mean by quick win is, just focusing on something you use day to day, and that might be your wardrobe. And, I'm a big advocate for having a personal uniform, which is quite extreme. What I mean by that is essentially wearing the same clothes every day, multiple copies of the clothes, of course. And that is to just eliminate some decisions in your day. You might want to start off by doing that for a few months to see what it feels like. Now, what I mean by this specifically is, I have T-shirts that I wear every day, but they're different colors, but they're the same style. Same with my bottoms, same with my jackets. It's very similar to how Steve Jobs always wore denim jeans and a black turtleneck, right? Or how Barack Obama always wore the same colored suits, or Mark Zuckerberg is always wearing the same clothes. So there's a couple ways to look at this. Yes, it reduces your decision fatigue and you can come up with a style. But the other aspect, which might be more aspirational for you, is that, like the people I just mentioned, you become iconic. You become known for a style, and this could change every season. I think if you were to implement something like that and audit what's in your wardrobe and experience the benefits of not having to think about that, but also being proud about what you're wearing, you might then start to prioritize this journey of thinking this way. Because the challenge of minimalism and decluttering specifically is that I think we would all like to live with less clutter, just like we would all like to be healthy. But the challenge I find when I talk to people about it is the capacity is full. They might be overwhelmed in life, and to think about having to audit all their things is just the last thing that's on their minds. And it's never something that gets pushed up the priority list. So start off with a quick win. So start off with your wardrobe, start off with your kitchen. Do you really need all those pots and pans? Do you really need all those spoons to serve with? My wife and I just, we live to this day with just a wine glass each. Do you really need multiple wine glasses? People come over for dinner, we're serving them in mugs and glasses, but we don't care. And they laugh about it because they know what we're about. So can you get some quick wins in those aspects that triggers a deeper journey for you in your minimalist journey? For veganism, same thing. It's about the actions are easy for any habit change if you're connected to the why. And this goes for health, this goes for veganism. So I think the first thing is, if you're open, is educating yourself and spending a weekend, watching documentaries like Earthlings or Dominion or Cowspiracy, which I'm sure you might be able to link to somewhere, to sort of start to change that paradigm that you have. And then from there, join the communities, whether it's on Facebook or in person, vegan communities and groups for people who are doing what you're doing and they're embarking on 30-day challenges and things of that nature. Because you're going to get a lot of pushback from your sphere of influence because this stuff hasn't become mainstream yet. And that's your biggest challenge. So I think it's conditioning your mind first and the actions will become really easy from there.
And finally, for those that are looking to live their passion, make a living living their passion, not having a boss, your final word of advice for them. It doesn't have to be 3 steps, but your final word of advice for those wanting to live their passion.
Yeah, I think don't put pressure on yourself to be the best at your passion or an expert at your passion. I think, for those looking to follow, and I speak from an online content creation standpoint because that's what I know, but I think you should see more success in the fact that you're sharing your journey. You might not be where you want to be, but you have the courage to document your journey anyway. That's some of the most relatable content that you can create. But I think you also need to see the success in publishing itself. And you could probably relate with this, Stephen, but there's so many people sitting behind computers right now in day jobs that they don't love, and they want to do something. They want to pursue something creatively or around their passion, but they haven't taken the first step to publish. And I think, like we've just launched a podcast, knowing very well that when we get 100 episodes in, we're going to be cringing at the first 5 to 10 episodes. We know that.
Right.
What we're proud to do is that we are publishing and we're showing up every week for our audience and we're getting the content out there. That is the game. And your skills are going to compound over time. So whether you're freelancing and you're just starting to break into photography or design, offer your services at a discount or work for free, but compound that knowledge, but be prolific, work with, I remember when I used to do freelance work with photographers. One of my clients was one of the most well-known photographers in Australia, and I asked her how she got started, and she said, I did 50 shoots for free in like a 4-month period. And that sounds absolutely outrageous to a lot of people in that trade. But being able to be so prolific for free completely kickstarted her career because she had a huge portfolio out the gates, a huge referral engine out the gates. So the cost of investment up front was totally worth it to her. And I think this is a prime example of, publishing prolifically, attaining clients prolifically, and just learning your trade as fast as you can. But again, using minimalism, what is the most important thing you can be doing? And it's usually the hardest thing. And it's normally the shoots, it's the clients, it's the content, it's the heart and soul of your business. That's what you need to be doing all the time, as much as you can, and then success will follow from there.
It's Michael Ofei. The website again, theminimalistvegan.com. Michael, thanks so much. I'm glad we made the time. I'm glad you find the time. We had you on the show. Thanks so much for being here.
It's been a pleasure, Stephen.
Continued success. This is Steve Prusek, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to Juice Guru Radio. Find out more about us at juicegururadio.com. Until next time, get your juice on.